Okay, then so now let's go ahead and start working on our next project. In this case, I'm going to close all. Okay, and I'm going to create a new project folder, which is going to be the toggle switch. And let me open a new file and let me create a new file. So inside this index.html, I'm going to say name the document as toggle switch button. Then I'm going to link our styles.styles.css, right? And in the styles.css, so I'm going to bring the Google Fonts. So we know that we are using three different extensions. One is the Google Fonts for bringing the Google Fonts directly into a project, either in HTML or CSS. So install this. Then I'm using the live server to run our application directly on a local server for the development purposes. So download this. Then I'm using the prettier for aligning our code in a clean and neat way for maintaining it in a proper light. So here let's bring the Google Fonts first. So I'm gonna bring the Google Fonts. You can either link it directly in your HTML or you can insert it in your CSS. So I'm gonna load the fonts through the CSS and I'm gonna say Poppins, right? Then I'm gonna target every single element and I'm going to remove the margin and I'm gonna remove the padding. Then I'm going to change box sizing into border box. So this helps us, this helps us to specify the behavior of every single element, so we can target its width and height property and it will work smoothly in all these browsers. Then I'm going to target the body tag, which in case it's going to be width 100%, 100 viewport width, and height, which is going to be 100 viewport height. So the reason we are using the viewport width and height, because we need to access both the screen width and height, or whatever the screen size it may be, we need to access the width and height properly. Then I'm going to make everything flow through the row direction and let's change it back to the column direction. So this helps us to align it properly wherever we want. Then align the items, everything in the center, justify the content, everything in the center in both vertical and horizontally, and gap between each and every elements in between the body, it should be 50 pixels. So here I'm going to bring the h1 tag and I'm going to say toggle switch container, right? So let me get into our root localhost. Then I'm going to bring the toggle switch and I can able to see the toggle switch right now, right? So let's jump into the HTML file and here let's generate a division. So this is going to be the button btn underscore cover, the entire button cover, and inside this I'm going to bring a division with a style called button. So dot btn and oh, 1 second, I'm missing something. Okay, so basically for this button we do have one this button btn dot, and this is going to be dot radius, dot button dot radius, and it's going to have an hashtag which is going to be button3 or something like that, right? So tab it. This is how it is going to be a division with the two different classes, one which is going to be button and another one, it's going to have one more class is called radius and it's going to have the id as btn3, right? And inside here I'm going to bring an input box, input, which is going to be a checkbox and it is going to have a the class name as checkbox itself. Then I'm gonna bring two different division. One is for the knobs, the button, which is going to be knobs, and another one which is going to be the layer, the small layer which we need to display. So it's going to be the layer. Okay, so save these changes. So these are all the divisions that we are planning to do, and let's get into the styles.css and I'm going to say the background color, which is going to be hash e8 e8 e8, something like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing the CSS styles right now. So first we need to target the button cover. So let me target the button cover dot button cover. So display, which is going to be a table cell. This is the one. So if you're wondering what is that, it is the combination of float and the position determines the type of box or boxes, right? Basically, we are trying to create a box layout. That's the reason we are using the table cell. And I'm going to mark this as a position, relative position, and width. I'm going to fix the width as 240 pixels, and the height, I'm going to fix the height as 160 pixels. Then box sizing, it's going to be border box, since we already defined it, so we don't need to mention it again. Then I'm going to target the button. mm, all right, so I think I made a small mistake over here by while typing. So what we need to do is, this button cover and this division is not necessary. So what we can do is, let's rewrite this. So don't worry about this, let's rewrite it. Instead of keeping it as a division, I'm going to keep it as a label, as button underscore cover, something like this. And I'm going to delete this. Okay, then inside here I'm going to bring an input tag, which is going to be the checkbox. Then I'm going to bring a span tag, which is going to have a class name as the slider. Okay, this much of division is it's enough. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is, let's get back into the CSS file. And for the CSS file, so for this particular button cover, so I'm gonna restyle something. Let me delete this. I'm gonna say font size, which is going to be the 17 pixels. Okay, then the position, which is going to be the relative position. Then the display, which is going to be inline block display. Then the width, which is going to be 3.5 eminent points, and the height, which is going to be 2 eminent points, something like this. Then I'm going to target the input tag. So here we are seeing the default checkbox, so we need to hide that default checkbox first. So I'm going to say dot button cover. Inside that we do have the input tag, so I'm going to say opacity level of that, it's going to be 0, so you can't see that button anymore. Then the width and height property also going to be 0, right? Then we need to target that slider which we have. So let me copy that slider dot slider, open it. The position of the slider, which is going to be absolute. So if you're trying to make a child as an absolute position, make sure that its parent element is going to be a relative position. In this case, the slider is inside the label, so I marked this particular class as a relative, so it can be absolute by referring this relative position. If you don't mark this as a relative position, it's always going to mark the body as the relative position, because that's the main parent for every single element inside the body. Right, then right after here I'm going to mark sure that cursor pointer, then keep the top 0, left 0, and right 0, and bottom 0. All right, and then background color, which is going to be RGB 182, 182, and 182. Okay, something like this. Now you should be able to see that square box over there, right? Then right after here I'm going to say transitions 0.4 seconds. Then border radius, which is going to be 10 pixels. Then right after here, for the slider, we are going to target the pseudo elements before. For that, I'm going to make sure the position is in an absolute position. Then content, which is going to be an empty content. Then I'm going to fix the height as 1.4 em eminent points, and width, which is going to be 1.4 eminent points. Now you should see that it is looking somehow with the different border radius effects. Let's continue writing the styles over here. And for this, I'm going to bring the background color, which is going to be RGB 255, 255, 255. And the alpha level, it's going to be 1. Okay, this is how it looks. Then I'm going to say border radius, which is going to be the 8 pixels. And then from the left onwards, I'm going to move it a little bit, 0.3 eminent points. And from the bottom onwards, 0.3 eminent points. Something like that. That's how now it looks like a switch, right? Then I'm going to say transform, rotate 270 degree. So it still looks like the same, but when you're trying to animate it, it looks quite different, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the slider, this button cover, copy it. So dot button cover input, whenever the input is being checked, if the input is being checked, plus the slider needs to react something, the slider color is going to be changed based on hash 21cc4c. Save it. Now if the user clicks this, the slider color, the entire background area, now you can see it is being changed, right? So, and the same way, let's target. So dot button cover, whenever the input is being focused, plus dot slider, open it. I'm going to add the box shadow, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 1 pixels blur effect, hash 2196 f3, right? Then now if I click this, it's going to have a mild shadow effect whenever the input is being clicked, right? Then right after here, I'm just going to say dot button cover input, whenever the input is being checked, then plus dot slider colon before the pseudo element needs to transform translate x. So we are trying to push it from this corner to this corner. In that, I'm going to make it to 1.5 eminent point. So now if I save these changes, and now when, oops, let me refresh this. Now when I click this, something is missing. It is not being pushed. The coloring changes, it's working perfectly. Okay, so now it's working. See, what I refreshed the page, so I just refreshed it, and now it is working, but the transitions, it's not looking so cool. Where what we are missing, I think we need to add these transitions as well as over here, 0.4 seconds. I just refreshed the page and it started working, and if I click this, look at that, see, that's the reason we are rotating it, right? So so every time by default the rotating position, it's going to be like this, and when the user translate it, it is trying to be get back to that rotate position. So that's the reason every time whenever the input is being focused, this translate, it's going to be triggered, right? So when I click this, it is going to be focused, and as well as it is going to be checked. So it's going to change the slider color, and as well as it changing the translate position of this button over here. So now we ourselves have a nice checkbox, and now you know how to customize your checkbox to make it like a toggle switch, right? Look, so cool, perfect.